Hi everybody and welcome to the ODI's Friday lunchtime lecture. My name's James and I'll be introducing the lecture for today. We're joined by Polly Hudson today, who is from the Centre for Advanced Spatial Analysis at UCL, and Polly's going to be talking to us about the project that they're working on called Colouring London. For those of you in the audience, please hold your questions until the end. I'll hand round this microphone, and if you could speak into the microphone so that the people online can hear the answers and the questions as well. And if you're following us online, please use the hashtag ODI Fridays if you have any questions for us. Now I'll hand over to Polly. Take it away.
Thank you very much. So we're from CASA at the Bartlett. We're a multidisciplinary team of mathematicians, physicists, geographers, architects, planners, and other disciplines working towards solving urban problems. That's what we're interested in, using spatial data. So Colouring London has been developed in order to support that work. We've put the two links, our main site link to colouringlondon.org and our GitHub link as well on the screen in case you want to look at the technical background. So what is Colouring London? So it's a statistical database that we're developing and a knowledge exchange platform on London's building stock. The idea is to collect, collate, and generate and visualise building attribute data, and also to look at verification processes. The main aim is to support urban sustainability, to drive more open data on the building stock, and to celebrate London's buildings. And we're also interested in promoting greater engagement and transparency in planning. All our platform code are open on GitHub, and our official launch is October 2019, but it's an ongoing process, so we'll be continually developing the site. So the idea is to bring together highly fragmented data on the building stock, and the main thing is to keep things simple. So what you can see here are the 12 data categories, which also have changed since the inception of the project. So we've got 12 main categories, over 50 subcategories, and 4 core features. So the 4 core features are to add and edit data, to view maps, to download data, which will happen from October, and in future a data showcase program of how the data are being used. So we have location data, clearly critical, the use and type of building, the ownership of building. This isn't detailed ownership, it's mainly whether it's state, non-profit or private. Age data, size and shape, construction, the team who built it, the sustainability in terms of kind of energy and repairability, the green context for the building, planning controls, whether it's under threat, and whether you like it and think it contributes to the city. So the project is managed at CASA at UCL, and the key thing is that we use Ordnance Survey building footprints and UPRNs, and we have a special agreement with Ordnance Survey and under the GLA license to do this. So having the main issue is comprehensive footprints that we need, and we're also, our first stage funding was from Historic England, EPSRC, and we currently have a Geospatial Commission and Innovate UK grant. So the project is being developed with a range of partners, and we're looking for more, so please get involved with us, including a building research establishment, Royal Geographic Society, Ministry of Housing, and others. So what you can see on this image is the 12 categories down the left-hand side. And so when you come onto our site, we ask you to log in, and then you can view the maps without a login, and then you can choose to just view or edit the data. So we are developing a mobile-friendly platform at the moment, but it's not complete, so you can get it on your mobile, but it's going to take a few months to get that really operational. So this builds on work obviously done by OpenStreetMap, on the Wikipedia model and citizen science models as well. It also builds on design principles for urban knowledge exchange platforms. primarily from the Building Exploratory, which was developed in the 90s, built by and for the local community. And the image here shows this is a charitable trust which looked to combine technical and physical exhibits. And here the students are lifting up the boroughs to see how the tube system really is underneath. And in this case, there were at that time, no tubes in Hackney. So this is also about a community platform that enables you to actually feed back views on the built environment as well. So the format needs to be simple for our platform. It's about collating complex, fragmented data at the micro, so at the building level and at the city scale. It's also about connecting the past and present to the future. And the idea is to work with residents and bring together residents, professionals, specialists, policymakers, academia in the commercial sector, so that we can all contribute and share knowledge on it. So our anticipated audiences, citizens, anyone interested in London's buildings, community-led planning groups, anybody working in the built environment as a professional, including housing providers, building historians, because the evolution of the stock is a key thing for us, energy and urban researchers, and this was very much developed with UCL Energy Institute as well, education bodies and local authorities, so we're also working with GLA. So this also revives the tradition of colour-coded London maps at building level. So what you see top left is the Booth poverty map. Top right is the London County Council bomb damage maps. And then you have the 1930s town planning survey for the City of London and the Goad insurance maps. But after the war, you don't get these micro-level maps at city scale. So this is something that we've been inspired by, and colour is crucial to the platform as a motivator to create beautiful maps to view and to add and use the data. So why, apart from collating the fragmented information, why is CASA developing the platform? So what we need in research is spatial data on cities to try and solve urban problems. And there's a real problem with information on the actual building stock. So what's happened since the 1990s in Europe is that the energy agenda is driving demand for up-to-date, comprehensive data to analyse and track energy and waste flows. Buildings are seen as where the greatest potential for energy reduction lies, but we don't know, how many we've got, what type, where, what we should be keeping or throwing away. We need to start having this discussion, and the first thing is actually just having basic information that you can use to have these discussions. At the same time, cities internationally are releasing property tax data and cadastral data, and this has been really happening since 2013. On the image, you see a visualisation by Bert Spahn for Amsterdam, and there are many of these for the US cities as well. But data on the building stock at this level is not released in the UK. So Valuation Office Agency hold these data on height, age, all these different attributes for all taxable buildings, but won't release it. So one of the things that we're having to do is actually generate it ourselves, whereas other countries are able to use data that's being released. Our view is that unless we actually do something about this soon and push for this release, we're going to fall behind other countries in many areas of urban research. So because we couldn't access these data, that we put in a Freedom of Information Act 2 VOA just for age data for Camden for a government-funded research project, which was refused on the grounds of privacy. Because of this, and also at the same time, energy researchers are purchasing, for example, age data from commercial suppliers, even though obviously you've got expert specialists in about historic buildings who really have detailed information. And so what we did was collect data on 20,000 buildings manually. So this was age data, typology data, and land use data. And it took 18 months, and by the time it was completed, it was out of date. This is because we don't track demolition, so we can't access demolition data. So these are the sort of things we're trying to raise through this project, these questions. So stocks are also very slow-moving systems. So if you want to predict, so I'm just going to show you a little clip. This was done by Steve Evans now at the Energy Institute. It took 2 years to build this little animation, sitting in an archive department with a number of researchers. And I'm just showing you a little clip. It's on YouTube, and you can see the link below. But because they're such slow-moving systems, if you want to predict what's likely to happen to them in the future, you actually need to go back a very long way to look at repetitive patterns. And that means you really need to understand that evolution, and that means you have to work with people who've got archive data and know about history. So you've got to start combining all these different types of expert knowledge and joining them together. So the other things that we were looking at testing before doing this project, there were 2 projects that influenced it. One was the London Evolution animation, which again is online, where we looked at whether we could collate and animate a fragmented historical network data. So we have an animation that just takes 7 minutes, and you can look at the evolution of London from Roman times to today. And that showed us it was possible to find these things and put them together into a kind of a simple story that was then relevant and useful to other people. The other work that Cass was undertaking was within the Survey of London Whitechapel project, and this was crowdsourcing and continues to crowdsource text-based historical data on the building stock, specifically testing it in Whitechapel. And we were also, a number of us were working in CASA to build on the work of OpenStreetMap and look at generating OpenStreetMaps but at comprehensive level. So obviously this is what many people have been working on. There were a number of us also doing that. And these things then led to this agreement with led to an agreement with Ordnance Survey. And actually, I'll talk about that in a second because there are issues with download still. So basically, you have your viewing maps, and you can just see, as I said, this is how the system works. And then if you're editing, where you've just got the little turquoise triangle, you can select your building. So the data that you're seeing here are the data we collected on age manually. And you can see the incredible diversity in central London of age, which you can't pick up on aggregated data sets such as VOA release at LSOA level. So you click on the building you want, and then you can see on the left-hand side that you would want to put in year built, say, and then as you do it, it will automatically colour. And this is our sort of first stage gamification in the sense that, you click it in, you get an immediate reward, which is like a thank you for contributing to this research project. And you can see the subdivisions in this. So subdivisions for each, we work with the specialist bodies relating to the specific characteristic on what they might be. So we also have this category called Like Me. I just wanted to very briefly touch on. This looks at this issue of we need to start looking at whether buildings work, and we need to get more feedback. And there's obviously lots of work in public engagement and transparency and planning that's happening at the moment. And we really wanted something where we could gather statistical data just as a starter to look at. So what we ask is not just whether you like it, but do you think it contributes to the city? And one of the things that this is designed to do in conjunction with the demolition section is to allow local communities that if their buildings are under threat, for example, but they know that they really contribute to the operation of the local area, they can highlight that the building is under threat, and then they can go to the like, and as individual users, they can click on the building that they think should be retained. And that brings attention to discussion about this particular building in this particular area, and allows them to record their views on it. So we're testing these at the moment. Everything we're doing is first stage, and we really welcome any feedback and discussion on our site. So if you click on the info button, which you can see next to the edit brush, you can also get why we're collecting each building category here, and also tips and sources on where you can get the information. So only 4 categories are live at the moment, but by October we aim at our launch to have all of them beginning to be operational so that you can experiment with them. And then we will start with a bulk download. So the big issue and problem for us is that though we've got this fantastic agreement with Ordnance Survey, which means we can get updated polygons, we can crowdsource into the polygons, we can visualise the data for every single building polygon in London, we can't release the geometry. And obviously the Geospatial Commission has been set up in order to try and push this agenda forward and build on the work of OpenStreetMap and others working in this area. But we can only download the unique reference number and our tables, but we can't put the address data or location or geometry there. So this is something we really want to kind of keep pushing forward. And so our work really is to say, let's demonstrate how useful this is so that we can accelerate this process. So the final thing is the data showcase. So this is for next year, we're looking to do this. And this is just a very simple kind of search area where if you want to look at height data, how that's being used and by what type of organisation, you can do that, but you can also upload examples of your projects where you've used our data, or you might have used property tax data in New York for height, and then we can learn from that as to how it can be applied. And so I just wanted to finish up with these two sort of key things that we're looking at, which is and examples of collaborative work. So, on one side, where we want to work very much kind of with community planning groups to test it, which I put this sort of Dalston "Who Asked You" slide up, because this is we've got to stop just dumping stuff on the streetscape. We need feedback, on actually whether things are working or not. And then the bottom of View City collaboration through the Geospatial grant, which will allow our data, or we're testing for our data to be streamed into this model, and there'll be a free app associated with it, so that we can see it visualized in 3 dimensions. And then a few other things that we're working on is historical map digitization and working with the historic building sector, examining data standards with organizations like Building Research Establishment and RICS, linking to the curriculum with RGS, RIBA, Institute of Historical Research and Historic England, and discussing the bigger picture of UK infrastructures with the ODI. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for a really interesting talk. We'll take some questions now. Firstly, is there anyone in the audience who has a question? Yes.
Yeah. Hi there. I think there's some really interesting stuff here. Are you looking at or planning on looking at the correlation of the data sets that you've overlaid? For instance, if you've got sentiment analysis of how people like the area linked to either crime stats or house prices or something like that. I think that would be really interesting to see if you could maybe find some sort of correlation between the disparate data sets.
Absolutely. So within our department and within the Bartlett, then the data will be used absolutely as you say. But we're also hoping that just by making it available, it will enable other organisations to start connecting that kind of information with the physical structure, which has been so hard without that data. So our main job is being a data provider, and then trying to look at verification processes to make it as high quality as possible, and then to show ways in which it could be used, but really just to support, whether you particularly were interested in one aspect, whether it was crime or house price or whatever. But absolutely also that will be done within our department.
And are you looking at sort of I guess you're looking at sharing that data out as well? So have you got like an API to the tool or something like that?
Yes, so that's what we're in the process of developing, absolutely. So and that's part of we had a first stage grant to just get the platform up and running from Historic England, but these 2 innovation grants are looking at how we actually get it out there and release it.
And it's one last one, if that's all okay. Just you talked about 2 different types of data, I think, in there. You talked about data that's got basically a shelf life that will maybe go out of date or change, and then you've got data that probably will never change, like the location of the building or the height of the building, although maybe it will change. But have you how are you sort of like accommodating the data might change? Because I can see that there's one thing where you could collate all that data together and make it into like a powerful resource, but then you might have to then have the added sort of job of curating that data or keeping it up to date in some way.
And I think you've hit on the sort of key thing for us is the fact that the stock is not static, but it's often treated in models as though it is. And this dynamic nature, as you said, for different types of data, it might be by month or whatever change, or 6 months if it's. But I mean, on the whole, it's changing relatively slowly compared to other things. But obviously, the age compared to the use is going to be very different. I think one of the key things, and why we want to get so many eyes on the data, is to really bring in the people who are watching particular things and asking them, trying to see how it's relevant to them and get the buy-in for it to be worth monitoring it and constantly keeping it up to date. Because you're never going to get one organisation to do all that, but you might get, whereas community-led planning groups, watching what's going on at that level, and then you might have people working on energy certificates or whatever, looking at the updates of that. So I think that's how we're sort of imagining it. But it's a huge question.
I guess if you're curating or you're pulling in data sort of from sources where people are curating their own data sets, and you're pulling them in as live sort of data feeds, that might be a way to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date data and you're sort of disseminating that curation sort of overhead.
Completely. And I think that what we want to just say at the moment is, if you're doing that, what are you working on? How can it fit in to this structure? Can we adjust to accommodate it so that it's then useful to many other organisations? And absolutely.
I can see a real, even if you're looking at the use of this in terms of saying there's an inherent fault or something wrong with a type of building, and being able to actually say, well, do we have a way of finding every other building somewhere in the UK that has that specific property or has that specific type of or may have that similar type of defect? And that's pretty
absolutely
useful.
And I think this issue of the typology is so critical, so the age and typology, so that you can really say, because you can infer so much from it, so that if you've got a Victorian terraced house, you know it's solid wall construction, you'll know all these different things kind of about it, which then will give you a whole load of other information. So absolutely, it's about sort of getting these basic things in place and then looking at how then they allow us to answer many more questions than we can at the moment, hopefully. Thank you so much.
Any more questions in the audience? No? Okay, we've got a couple of questions online, and I've got a question as well. One of the questions online is, how are you engaging with people and getting them to actually use the map that you've created?
So at the moment, we're still at a very early stage. We haven't even really publicised the site properly, and we won't do on a large scale until October. But we love, if you know about it, to just try and come and test it. We're doing specific work with a number of local community groups, so in Somerstown and in Archway. So we've got user interface testing and testing specific categories, such as the Like Me section. And then we're also working with organisations who are using, for example, the Energy Institute to look at the value of the age data, the Survey of London to look at the generation of it, and with Historic England the network. So, but we're in terms of the communication of the project, that won't happen till October on a kind of large scale.
Cool. And you mentioned that quite a lot of it's open source. Has anyone sort of shown any interest in rolling this out in, say, Manchester or Liverpool or
So we have had interest from Beirut in colouring Beirut,
okay.
And it absolutely is designed so that the platform code can be used, and we'd be really interested in looking at a partner city in the UK to kind of develop. Ad might have a few words on that.
Yeah, London is very much our initial test bed, and we have great ambitions to extend to the entire country, so covering the UK eventually. I think we've even registered a few domain names along those lines in anticipation. We are we've had a very small team to get us just to this far. I mean, it's been essentially 2 or 3 people for the last 2 years to get to here. We are now increasing the size of the team. We've had a few, the Innovate UK grants, fantastic. It's going to allow us to extend more EPSRC grants. So we're getting more people working on development of the platform. We are working closely with all the various organisations that Polly talked about in terms of getting people on board to help contribute data. And eventually, you know, we are hoping that we will be the kind of the place to go to for building data for the United Kingdom, for sure. I mean, the interest from MHCLG, I think, is kind of indicative of, you know, the potential that the platform has. London, I mean, we're in London. We're interested in London. It was a sensible place to start, working with the GLA, working with Ordnance Survey as our test. But yeah, for sure, we're looking to go, you know, very much bigger with this, and we think it's got the potential, and it's going to be exciting over the next few years. I mean, I'm an academic and I'm interested in doing some research on the data. I can't wait until we start getting, you know, piles of lovely, open, interesting data to answer some interesting questions with.
Great.
And we're really interested on our discussion threads in the areas that people are interested in, the categories they like, things that we're missing, you know, because this is, in order to develop something that is relevant to cities in the UK, you know, every city, then we really need to kind of go down lots of avenues and work out, you know, what these core categories should be, because going back to earlier, it has to stay simple. You know, it's got to stay clear and easy to understand and use. And the built environment is incredibly complex. But this discussion is an ongoing discussion that we're looking forward to having.
Great. And my question, this might be, you might not be able to answer this yet, but what does the impact look like for you? And have you got any kind of KPIs around that?
I think particularly in terms of those people working in, I mean, this is quite specific to our department, but in people working in resilience and vulnerability in the building stock and energy reduction, we want to get sufficient information out there that's comprehensive and easy to use, that is relevant to their work and is making a difference. So I think that's key. I mean, I think the other thing is that just to start getting feedback that people feel that they're being able to have their say more on and use the tool to identify areas that they want to save that are being potentially demolished. I mean, those sort of things. So it's, but this, as Adam mentioned, I mean, this sort of becoming the first port of call for open data within 2 years, I think is the key thing for us to test how far we've got, because part of it is collection, but we'll also be generating and pre-populating some data categories using data such as LiDAR data or whatever to generate height or whatever. So so we can push forward certain areas like that too.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, just to add a little bit, I mean, I think impact is going to vary according to who is using the data. We've had so many different types of people who are interested in the sort of data that we're collecting. So we have the Royal Institute for Chartered Surveyors and the Royal Institute for British Architects, and that they have specific interest in the buildings and the attributes of those buildings. We then have kind of the government, Department for Housing, Communities and Local Government, who are interested in how buildings interact with the sort of populations and these sorts of things. We have, I gave a talk a few weeks ago to some schools within London, and as an educational resource, developing knowledge around the built environment for people who live in the city is sort of fantastically important. That people are interested in it from a historical perspective. So there are many different impacts I think this could have, and sort of it's really if people are finding use and benefit in the data that we are collecting and then disseminating, then I think that is the kind of impact that we're interested in. People are interested in the data, people using it, and people sort of feeling like it's something that contributes to what they are doing. I think that's the answer, really.
And that's what this showcase section will allow us to do, sort of better track actually how it's being applied, how the extent to which it's being used, and then use our discussion threads to keep kind of adding stuff that people need.
Okay, brilliant. I think that we'll wrap up there. Thank you very much for an interesting talk. Next week, our lunchtime lecture is going to be around digital mental health, so that should be a really interesting one, so make sure you're there.